Good evening. I'm Michael Lane, filling in for Tom Olson. Tom is traveling to the great wilds of Austin this week for the New Worlds Conference. So we should wish him luck. He cannot do a live show, which is what he tries to do when he's traveling, but there's no way to pull off the logistics for that. Tonight we're gonna talk like we normally do about some of the interesting news. It's kind of a quiet news week this week, so not as much. And then we will pull our friend and guest Aaron Oesterle into the conversation. Sean, our producer, usually stays in the background, but today he is going to be joining us in the front, so that'll be kind of a fun change. And with that, let's get this party started. Hey. All right. So from the news desk at the center, the show is sponsored by the Center for Space Commerce and Finance. What is the center? We champion and strengthen emerging space startups and space adjacent enterprises worldwide through advisory, access, and advocacy. Our pitch events and world-class boot camps fortify startups to be investor ready. A lot of our work, especially this podcast, is supported by our listeners and fans like you. So please go to the Center for Space Commerce and Finance.space, cscf.space/support, and click that donate button. A little in the tip jar each month makes a big difference. And now, let's see. Sean is not my oldest space friend, but he has been around for a while, 20 years. So let's bring in Sean and start talking about the news.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, how's things?
It's going. It's
good.
Going. Yeah.
Anything going on?
No, I've been doing a lot of writing.
Yeah, you do a lot of writing. That's good. Yeah. That's good.
So I'm sticking to my strengths, which is business, and
I'm
trying not to step in other people's dimensions.
Right on. It's been a pretty busy week for me. Last week and the week before, really the week before was Space Week in Seattle, and there were like 15 or 20 events. But it's this week and especially next week is AI Week in Seattle. There's nearly 100 events, nearly 100.
Yeah.
So I've gone to 3 already. I'll probably go to, I think I'm scheduled for 7 more. So yeah, it's there's a lot going on. It's been fun. It's been educational, and it's really intriguing to kind of see.
Yeah, it is, and it's the trajectory of it, the possible trajectory of this, and where we're going. It's very interesting, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people to invest in coming up. I don't really tell people what to invest in. I tell them what to look for.
Right? Yeah.
Because that's not my place to tell people what to invest in. I'm trying to be a light.
Right. Yeah. Morty, hey, how's things? I had a nice conversation with Morty yesterday. And Aiden, glad you're here. Quick question. What are your thoughts on Starship and Starship alternatives?
We were just talking about that before.
We were just a minute ago. Aiden, you may not be aware. I've talked about it a couple times on this show. I and Michael Mealing coined the phrase the Starship singularity. And my friend Peter Garrettson, retired Lieutenant Colonel Garrettson, wrote a really interesting paper called the Starship Singularity. And it's its origin story comes from Werner Vinge's original technological singularity idea that says AI is going to take over. It's more than that. It's actually really well written. I'm just simplifying. But in that Starship singularity, it's the idea that everything changes once that system comes online. And why you call it singularity is because you cannot see beyond that event horizon once that thing happens. So I am all in on Starship and the singularity. But one of the things that Gerritsen and I and Mealing have all really stressed is that it's not just about SpaceX. It's that yes, that company is a catalyst, but we already know, and we're going to talk about it in the news here in a minute, we already know that Europe, India, China, Japan are all working on reusable rocketry. There's half a dozen American companies, all with varying stages. We're going to talk about some of them tonight of reusable rocketry. That SpaceX has a notable advantage, but the game is not by any means over yet. And there are lots of spin-offs that are going to happen as a result of Starships. So I hope that answers your question. Take a look at Gerritsen's paper. It definitely has a militaristic perspective because that's who he is and that's whose audience is. But you can, by reading it, you will kind of broaden your horizons and start imagining what the rest of the world looks like if Starship comes online. So, yeah, that's my comment. I hope that helps. All right, Sean, let's talk about the news.
All right. I'll be ready in just a second. I just want to put in the chat the link to Gerritsen's paper. Hopefully that got the right one.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah.
If you should click on that, that should take you there. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, Gerritsen is I don't know. Yeah, he just did. Do you not see it, Aiden? He just posted that link. Gerritsen is a big thinker in a formal think tank out of Washington, D.C. So his job is to think about how space is evolving. Again, he's got a military background, so he's got a military perspective on this. But he's quite knowledgeable and quite smart, and I'm pretty happy to say he's joining our team. So, I have a bias because I like the guy, but even if I didn't like the guy, he's really smart. So, yeah. Does that help? Yeah. Starship Singularity. Okay. Okay, great. Good. All right. Let's talk about relativity since we're talking about competitors. Let me put them in here. Just a moment. You got it, Sean, or I got it? I got it.
I get it. Which one was it? I'm sorry about
it. Let's just go with relativity. We haven't heard much from relativity in a while. They've been kind of quiet, to my knowledge. So, we were just talking about Starship Singularity, and I hope you know that Terran R, the R for their rocket, stands for reusability. So their first two rockets that were adequately successful led them to basically a complete redesign and rebuild. And this Terran R is their reusable version. So it's kind of cool to see. I haven't heard much about relativity for a while, so it's kind of nice. I was a little worried they were in trouble. But according to this article, things are pretty good, and it's going to be. And they're looking to take on SpaceX for a piece of that business. So I don't think they're going to take much away from SpaceX. I don't. That's going to be really hard to do, but I do think that they can enlarge the market. And I don't have a news article up here, but the Korean space company InnoSpace just got their launch license a couple days ago, and they're moving this direction also. So there's going to be quite a bit of rocket power, launch power coming online pretty quickly. Sean, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, the more the merrier, in my opinion, quite honestly. But I still think it's going to come down to here in the United States, just 2 or 3 key players. But I think SpaceX is still going to be the Coca-Cola, and everybody else is choosing Pepsi.
Well, and it's everybody else combined doesn't get to Pepsi, right? At the end of this article, I'm just going to read it directly. The 42-meter tall Terran R with a published capability of launching in a reusable configuration 23,500 kilos. So that's 1/10. Is that right? I think it's 1/10 of or 1/5. No, I think it's 1/10. Yeah, no, it's 1/5. It's 20% of Starship. And it's in the same range as Falcon 9. So let me just keep reading. 22,500 kilos to low Earth orbit or 5,500 kilos to GEO. It's attempting to compete with other partially reusable vehicles like the Falcon 9, Neutron, New Glenn, along with fully reusable Stoke Space. Much like the Falcon 9, Terran R's first stage will land on an automated landing ship downrange after launch. So the playbook has been established.
Yep.
The Falcon proved that path works, and so folks are copying it. But that's 5 competitor rockets just in this paragraph.
But one thing I am looking at is that a good chunk of SpaceX's launch or for internal operations for Starlink. Mm-hmm. So those other launchers are not going to have access to that kind of launch pace, where SpaceX has to before they're, but they also have deep pockets. So there's this opportunity for competitors to pick up the slack outside of SpaceX's demand. So I think we should see somebody come along. But like I said, they're not going to be the Coke. Coke's been established. So
Coke's been established. All right. Next up, we're going to talk about the one of 2 mergers this week. Pardon me. Link and Omnispace. Now, I don't know who Omnispace is. I think they're connected. Well, they're out of Luxembourg, so they've got to be connected to SCS Global. But we've talked about Link a couple times. They were the first to prove direct-to-device capabilities. Our friend, and I'm certain that Aaron knows him because of his background, but Charles Miller started Link, and then also whatever that space group that met in DC that I suddenly can't come up with a name. I'll ask Aaron about it. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. Anyway, so Charles Miller has been a pillar in the space community for a long time. He was on Trump 1's transition team, and it's really kind of cool to see them merging. I think this is good news for a friend of the community, but I do actually wonder if this was, a forced merger because the market is consolidating. Even though they were first, they didn't grab the big piece of pie because SpaceX gobbled it all up. I'm really not sure if this is good news or bad news, but I'm hoping it's good news for a friend of our community.
Yeah. Mergers is always tricky.
Yeah. I wonder, and this is a press release, so it's not really giving much information about it.
And who's the real winner in this? Because take Wells Fargo.
Right.
That really is not Wells Fargo when they merged with the North Bank. The North Bank was the winner. They just kept the Wells Fargo name, the brand.
Okay.
It was their management that took over, and that eventually led them to having problems. Same thing happened with Daimler Chrysler and Fiat. They were still having problems merging together.
Right.
Managements were not. It's culture clashes too.
Yeah.
So now you can have that problem with this merger going to happen, or it might work. But then again, you have to look out for those things. It's kind of odd to me, again, like you said, though, I mean, the problems with liquidity in the market, and people are trying to either exit out or find, but the market will adjust.
Sure.
We're starting to see signs of financial institutions make an adjustment to help with the liquidity problem. But yeah, this is definitely something that it's interesting. I need to watch more of it.
Yeah, I would like to know. I'm hoping that the folks that pioneered this technology actually cashed in on their innovation, because Link had a bunch of patents in this field. So, and once upon a time, SES Global was the largest satellite operator in the world. They got eclipsed by Planet before Starlink came online. And now SES is just, it's a medium, small-sized player by comparison. But my hope is that... Go ahead.
Maybe they're betting on that the merging their capabilities, their unique capabilities that they're bringing together, can give them a competitive edge.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping, is that because they've got a bunch of satellites, that it allows Link's technology to scale. So fingers crossed for everybody involved. All right, moving on quickly. Let's see. What is this one? Sorry, I'm off on the wrong one here. I wanted to pull up the other merger story, and I suddenly don't see it, which is really peculiar. Oh no, here it is. Here we go. Sorry. Three companies in Europe decided to merge as a way of shoring up their business. Airbus, Thales and Leonardo decided that they are going to quote unquote combine their satellite manufacturing and services businesses. These are three vastly different cultures, all European, but very different cultures, very different communities, and a lot of very stakeholders. So in the same way that United Launch Alliance was a weird chimera between Lockheed Martin and Boeing, this feels like a really weird chimera. So I think this is just a reality that they can't compete against the SpaceX and the Starlink network in their current incarnation. But I really have some curiosity can pull this off. This is a blending from my perspective. The combination will employ 20,000 people with 6.5 billion euros in revenue based on 2024 figures. It is expected to generate, quote, triple digit millions of synergy starting after 5 years. So that seems kind of bonkers to me, but okay. The market didn't seem to care very much. 2% up for Airbus and Thales Alenia, and less than 1% change for Leonardo. So, yeah, the markets is like meh, but I think it's be harder than me. I think I'm concerned about that one.
I think the markets are having concerns just like you are, and that's the reason why it's just whatever.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
my problem with Airbus is that they have other things that they're interested in besides going to space. So that's the drag on
That
them.
was Boeing's problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I honestly,
precisely.
you're gonna. It's almost getting to the point where you either are a space company or you're not. You can't dabble in it. And back for a while you could because you were the only player in town, but now you got companies that are zeroing in and focusing on that. I think that's going to be a challenge for these large companies that diversified. Could be wrong, I think, but then if you look at SpaceX, they diversified. They diversified Starlink, diversified into direct to customer. So, but they're within their domain.
All right, let's move on. I'm going to not say a whole lot about this. I'm going to guess that Aaron, our guest, is going to say more. But NASA is already building Artemis 3. So what's the holdup with Artemis 2? Now, I love that headline. I'm just going to just chuckle at that headline. I don't really have anything else to contribute to this article. It gives a pretty reasonable evaluation about how hard Artemis 2 has been to actually get built and launched, and how Artemis 3 is creeping up behind it. And there's a possibility that Artemis 3 could launch before Artemis 2. I feel that's a little far-fetched, but not a zero chance. So I don't have anything else to add to this other than it's an interesting take. And it's like, look, space is hard. So Artemis 2 is slow and behind schedule, which we all know. So nothing else to add to that. You have anything, Sean?
No, I really don't have anything. I focus on more of the commercial side and then what's going on at
NASA. Yeah. All right. I'm going to skip it then. We are going to, this is a show that is about money and space. And in the same way that a couple weeks ago, we're all excited about our $640 billion economy. And then we put us side by side with Walmart at their 681 billion revenues for one single company. And it just kind of puts our industry in perspective, right? Our whole industry can't match the one big company. Now it's the biggest company, but our whole industry can't match one big company. And so I thought it was interesting to also put up this map of the largest economies of the world. China's almost 21 trillion, the United States almost 32 trillion. So in one way, you could look at this and say, well, our 680 billion or 640 billion, that's about 1/55th of the U.S. market, which is cool. But it means we're not playing at the big levels yet, and we're not going to be for a while.
We're still maturing.
Yeah. But we are still bigger than a bunch of countries. So, we're bigger than Singapore. We're bigger than Thailand. We're bigger than the Philippines. We're bigger than Bangladesh. Like, our industry is larger than many nations. Many. We're in the top 25. We haven't cracked the top 20, depending on how you look at it. but we're a top 25 nation in terms of size and revenue. So,
and we're growing.
I think that's
we're growing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah, and look, Switzerland is 1.1 trillion, and we're projected to hit the trillion mark in the next 5 years. And you add that to Japan with their $8 billion investment, and Germany with their $41 billion investment, and then the giant investment from JP Morgan at 150 billion a year. By the way, I did look into that more. Right. They're doing 150 billion a year for the next 10 years, so $1.5 trillion.
What was the breakdown of it?
They are doing $10 billion of their own money, their own investment fund. They're putting $10 billion of their own money into those 27 key sectors. Four big segments. Space is one of the big segments. So they're putting 10 billion of their own money, but they are also working with other companies and those other company financings that gets us to that 1.5 trillion number.
I'm wondering if it's their focus, their strategic focus is on ports, on real estate for ports, launch ports.
They do call out port facilities specifically as part of their 27 core investment thesis. So that's on their mind for sure.
Well, and I say that because strategically for me, if I'm investing my money, I want it in an asset that I can recover something if something goes wrong. But real estate, where a launch base is, a port is, and I still have real estate.
There's still land, right?
So
yeah,
I can see that really picking up. And we do need it. We do need launch capacity. So
yep. All right. Last thing, and then let's just cut it off. We talked about Reflex Orbital 2 weeks ago. The astronomers are pretty pissed off about the idea of 4,000 massive space mirrors. No surprise, the astronomers think it's, quote, pretty catastrophic. I don't have anything more to say. We talked about this one a week ago. I have a lot of doubts about their plan, but their plan is to put, from a different article, it's not this one, but from a different article, they have an idea, they've imagined where they have 250,000 reflector dishes in the sky, beaming power down to currently operating solar panel farms. There's going to be problems with that. So this article is referencing just the 4,000 reflectors that they want to start with, but they have a much bigger plan than that. So I have some doubts. I have some legit concerns about this. I don't usually, complain about other people's business models, but I have a lot of doubts about this one, and I'm concerned about the technology.
Well, I wonder what they would say about, we've worked around the issue of not having light at night as far as civilization.
Yeah.
I don't think the idea of having a light at night is going to really do anything, really have any impact is what I'm looking at. I mean, it might be a novelty in novel situations, but most of everything else, I just don't see it. I'm having a hard time seeing it. But I do know there'll probably be something that comes out of it that we can use somewhere else like with anything that we explore, but it's just, I don't think it's going to be what they're intending.
If it is what they're intending, I have some concerns. Yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's bring our guest on. By the way, there is an article. I'm going to post the link to it. Everybody already knows this, but it's nice to see it in Fortune. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos says millions of people will be living in space by 2045. It's not a terrific article. It's very fluffy, but it's fun. So I'll post that link to the chat. All right. Let us bring on our friend and advisor. Aaron, I have wanted to call you Dr. Oesterle since the day I met you. You're not a PhD, right?
No, I'm not. I am working on my master's, actually. I'm working on my independent study right now, which is going to be an interesting project because I am one of the I'm going to compare the Chinese lunar plan with the American lunar plan and see whose is more capable, and whether the Artemis program can actually compete with the Chinese. I have my personal opinions about where that stands right now, but I intend for it to actually be a formal, analysis that looks at the hardcore data and says yes or no. I'm not a doctor.
Can you give us a sneak peek and just say like leaning one way or the other? Because I'd like to know that.
I'll put it this way. Personally speaking, I am skeptical. I'm nowhere near finished with the research.
Yeah,
but
okay.
like one of the things that has stuck out in my mind is how the current Artemis program, and this is not. I'm referencing what is funded and not what is proposed.
Okay.
I want to stipulate that up front.
Okay.
Artemis, under the current program of record with SLS, Orion, and HLS and everything, they're going to fly every other year. That's one moon mission every other year. Whereas I have not looked at the Chinese hard.
Right.
But if you're going to do a lunar base, just looking at what the resupply requirements for ISS, they're flying. Is it once a month, once every other month?
Right. Like Mars, you do every other year, not the moon.
So right. I have my suspicions, but they are suspicions. Okay. I want it to be. I really intend for this to be a hardcore look at the data. Cool. And when I have that, I'm going to share and get it published and whatnot. I intend
Excellent.
for it to.
Excellent.
But no, I'm not a doctor. I did get my background in aerospace engineering, but as I always like to say, I'm a really bad engineer. You don't want me designing your rocket.
Right. Give a little bit of your origin story. I met you, and the reason I think of you as a doctor is because kind of the way that we met in, I think, 2006 at ProSpace. It was
either 05 or 06. I can never remember.
Yeah.
But it was at ProSpace. That was my first. That was the first time I kind of became really enmeshed in the policy side of space. It was my first brush with policy, and I've never really looked back because I'm good at I love the policy work. I love policy work to death, and I had the opportunity, and I met a number of amazing people. Some of them are. It's very interesting, just the number of people I've met and whatnot in the policy world. I've got contacts on both sides of the aisle. I worked under Mr. Muncie for a very long time. Still really good friends with him. He only yells at me every other day these days as opposed to every day. And I say that with all the love in the world, Jim. You know that.
Yep. For those that don't know, James Muncie, was one of the co-founders of the Space Frontier Foundation. You had the loud one, Rick Tomlinson, the savvy one, Jim Muncie, and I will say the smart one, the effective one was Werb, Bob Werb,
Yep.
right?
Yep, those three together founded the organization.
Yeah.
And these days, I'm the policy director, and I'm also serve on the board of the foundation. I do a number of side projects, but it's all about space policy in some form or fashion. I can share some news for. I don't know how much you guys have been following this. Did you see what Mr. Musk called the acting NASA administrator?
A dummy, Scott
Yes.
Dummy. Yeah.
Sean Dummy.
That's fantastic. Yeah, he said some other really colorful things also.
It's been a wild week in DC, and it's been a wild few weeks in DC.
So talk about that a little bit. Tell us what's going on from your bird's eye view. A city, some would call it city under siege.
Sure.
NASA is bleeding people. NSA.
Let's start with the mile high and then dive down.
Okay.
The mile high is the showdown over the budget, and I don't just mean the NASA budget, but the federal budget.
Right.
And I'm not going to get into the politics of that one because that's a separate topic. But I literally had a conversation a week or two ago with a congressman, and he basically said, "Look, nothing's happening in DC for space stuff at all."
Right.
Because of the budget.
On anybody's radar. Why? Yeah, there's other things that are more important.
So, in that respect, it is still. Everything is in crisis mode for that. There's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of discussion in the background of what will happen and what will be agreed upon in the final budget version for various things. As I understand it, science has not been cut nearly as much under the appropriations committees. For those who don't remember their civics classes, there's appropriations and authorizations. Authorizations make the laws and the policies. Appropriations spend the money. Appropriations. There's the science part of NASA has had substantial backing, and then you have the reconciliation bill fund a number of things related to the human spaceflight stuff. But the administration has made it very clear they're not interested in doing that. And so it is unclear what is happening. You add to that the announcements that's come out in the last few weeks of NASA basically saying that Artemis 3, I know you asked about Artemis 2, to answer your question, no, Artemis 3 will not launch before Artemis 2.
Okay, right.
Because Artemis 3 is wholly dependent upon actually landing on the moon, which means having a lander. And right now, there is no lander. Right. I tip my hat to all my friends at SpaceX, but it is not clear. There's skepticism from various corners in DC about whether or not the NASA, the SpaceX HLS lander system will fly anytime before the end of this decade.
Right. Legitimate concerns about that, and we're betting the farm. We're betting our international prestige on this one very unproven capability. Can it launch? Can it launch on time? Can it refuel? Can you transfer fuel? Can you get there to the moon? Can you land on the moon without tipping over? And can you come home? All giant questions that are time-consuming and expensive to solve.
Mm-hmm. And so there's this push, and it happened, was it last week or this week? I don't remember. So much is happening right now, where Sean Duffy, the acting NASA administrator, basically said, I don't trust. I don't have confidence. I don't know how he said it, but basically, I don't have confidence in SpaceX.
Right.
And if they're going to, and so they are going to open up the contract and rebid the contract for Artemis 3 lander system. Now, whether that's, whether that's Blue or Lockheed Martin has hinted that they're interested in that contract, or somebody else, I don't know. It's very early days, considering that it just happened this past, in the last 7 days.
Right.
So that is churning a lot of people in the space policy world. What's happening with that? And how will they bid it? How will they run it? Who gets what? There was a very interesting article from Ars Technica about the Blue proposal. It was hinted. It hinted at their Lander Mark 1 strategy. Somehow using that. I'm not aware of the technical details, so I don't want to speak to it. And there's also a proposal to basically recreate the lunar module that you could theoretically do. The downside of that is it would be a cost plus contract, and it would be rewarding a lot of bad behavior. And I'm not a huge fan of that. Now, I know there are members of Congress who prefer that because they're just comfortable with that. I am skeptical though that will get them to the moon before China.
Right.
But
is it important to get to the moon again before China?
Yes and no. It depends on how and who and why. Speaking personally, I think it's more important to it's not the first person who actually beats China to the moon, but who can establish the infrastructure for controlling the moon. And I hate that phrase, but that's the best I've got. It's who's in charge when we're on the moon, not just who lands on the moon. Because we could land on the moon quickly, but that doesn't mean we actually have the capability to do large-scale infrastructure development. And with China talking about having a 500 trillion cislunar economy by 2050, that's a whole different ballgame. I mean, you guys are the business people. That's a whole different ballgame than we've ever done before.
Right.
And if you're going to do that, you've got to have a very different skill set, very different capabilities that are online, that are much more, that are much more cost effective, that produce a lot more value, all those kind of things.
Just for perspective, that's why I pulled up that one graph. The global economy in 2026 is expected to be $130 trillion. And they are saying 25 years from now, the space economy will be 3 times bigger, 300% bigger than the world's economy now.
That's what China. That's what China's saying.
Pretty far-fetched, but not. It doesn't seem impossible. It just seems very, very hard. But that is the argument, right? That is the argument that whomever controls. Now, I don't shy away from that word. I'm very comfortable with that word. Whomever controls the moon, whomever controls L1, whomever controls, the resources, the limitless resources off-world, controls the economy of the world, right?
I will say, on the foundation website, under the policy section, we have a report from Namrata Goswami. She's an incredible person. She's a doctor. Yep. I can't say enough of great things about her because she's just awesome. But she knows her stuff very well about China, and she lays it all out there for you. And it should scare you, like what they're proposing to do, how they're proposing to do it, that kind of thing. And I would recommend anybody go read it. It's pretty accessible. It's just look on the Space Frontier Foundation's website. So that's lurking in the background of all of this is how do you, where do you, what's the how do you grasp that? And I think we behoove ourselves if we don't take China as a threat seriously. Now that doesn't mean we can't engage with them, because I think at some level you have to engage with them.
Yeah.
But we also need to acknowledge they're not our friend.
Right.
They're for China. They're not for us. They're for China.
Yeah.
But they will do friend things for their benefit.
Yeah. I mean, there's a great example of this. I had a conversation with Dr. Scott Pace, who's no dub towards China, but he basically said we need a system by which we can have conversation with China about things like radio operations.
Right. Yeah.
Because we don't want, if something happens, obviously we're both parties to the. For those who don't know, there's the Astronaut Rescue Treaty, which I can't remember its formal title, but it's out there. And if something happens, obviously we want to we would want to help them, and they would want to help us, and that kind of thing. And so that's you need those kind of things for constructive dialogue.
Right.
Now, how and why?
I'm definitely a globalist, right? I went to International Space University for a reason. Like I want this, Star Trek vision of the future. But there's value in having a competitive, not combative, but a competitive nation state. I've said it before. I miss the old Soviet Union because the world was a more stable place when you had those two blocks. And so I don't think of China as the big boogeyman, but I do think that we should be aware and concerned about their potential threat.
But that's something that keeps a lot of people up. And I will say, one of my colleagues at the foundation, Dr. Taylor Winkleman, she is an amazing woman. She knows another one who knows her stuff real well. She's done some deep dives on rare earths and other critical mineral, I should say, not rare earths, but critical mineral technology.
Yeah.
And that's something that whoever corners the market on critical minerals for lunar resources, that's kind of the big boogeyman in the background, is right, because whether it's China or India or whoever.
Well, let's talk about DC. Let's bring it back home. What can we expect from NASA? I mean, I'm not asking you to pull out your crystal ball. That's in about 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes. But DC today, National Science Foundation, NASA, NOAA. What does DC look like when you cut 4,000 of their core staff? They've cut what? That's pretty close to 25%, maybe a little bit less than that, but in that range.
I mean, I want to be a little careful because it's a complicated topic. It really is, and on one hand, I want to see reforms happen at NASA so it becomes a more effective agency. On the other hand, I'm not convinced that you can do it by taking a chainsaw to it and it'll be that effective, because I think, and it's not clear that there's a long-term plan for it. And I mean, and that's my fear, is there's not, there's lots of people who think they know how to reform it, but for NASA reform to happen, however you want it to happen or not, it will require presidential input, and and not just input, but presidential approval and cover.
Yeah.
Because Congress has had the control of NASA for a long time, and I mean we saw that with the commercial crew program when it was clear Congress did not want commercial crew. They'll sing its praises now, but at the time,
no, people were risking their careers bringing that up. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I remember a conversation I had with a staffer at the time who was, who the member of Congress was very supportive of what President Obama was doing, but he basically said, "I'm having to pull back my member because because everybody is so angry at Obama because he's canceling the space program." Not that he did. Not that he did. I want to stress that for everybody who's on there, who's listening. But that was, that was the rhetoric. Yeah. And so I just, I mean, I want to, I'm not a fan of the space launch system. I think it has its problems. And I think there are other areas where you could see reform that would be good at NASA. But I also, again, I don't want to take a chainsaw to it without. I want to be careful and targeted, such that it doesn't, it doesn't destroy lives, so that it doesn't destroy a good knowledge base that it has, because it has an incredible knowledge base.
Are you willing to put a bet on whether it's going to be Isaacman or Duffy in charge?
No, I will not take that bet, because ultimately that is going to be a decision at a presidential level. It is clear that Duffy has visions and plans for himself that extend beyond Secretary of Transportation and acting administrator of NASA.
Right.
And
I hadn't thought about that. Actually, that's a new piece of information. You think he's got something beyond that?
Oh yes, no. There was a Wall Street Journal article about that a while ago, where he is. Yeah. I think it was Wall Street Journal. I can dig it up if you're really curious about it. But basically, there's talk of him wanting to be president at some point in the future.
Oh, I didn't know about that at all. I missed that entirely.
Mm-hmm,
all right, watching the clock here, I'm going to ask you about 5 years and 25 years, but in the 3 minutes before that, Golden Dome. Go. What do you have to say about Golden Dome?
Nothing, basically. I have not been tracking Golden Dome at all.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not a military space person at all. And I'm not convinced it's going to go anywhere, but I'm really not involved in it, so I can't speak to that. If I can jump to another topic briefly, very briefly.
Yeah.
I will say that what's interesting is the 26th campaign is gearing up for president for the off-season elections for things like Congress and senators, and I want to encourage everybody get involved in that in the elections, and that's how you can find out whether your member or candidate has an interest in space. I'm doing that very strategically, and I can't say anything more than that because it's not that hard to do. You can donate to your member or candidate. They will call you if you donate enough, and it's not a huge amount. And you can talk to them, or you can meet them at an event and say, "What's your pitch on space?" Especially for new members of Congress, they will know not much, and it's not uncommon for a new member to be assigned the science committee. So I encourage everybody to get involved in their politics and find out more.
I was, we started this conversation talking about pro space. That was a giant learning curve for me. I had so much fun with that. I got to meet, my congressman at the time was Jay Inslee. I'm from Washington State. He was a relatively young guy. Fast forward, he becomes the governor for 12 years. Fast forward, he signed a proposal that I put together for ISU. It took almost 15 years for that to happen, but it was really a profound thing for me to do pro space. And I loved it. It was so effective.
I will say, if I can add one more pitch in, we do the March Storm event still. We're starting the process for it, and love to have everybody come out for that. It's a lot of fun. You learn a lot about how the government works, and you help move space policy forward.
I love it. I'm going to particularly, we've got a couple fans that are regulars here. There's two guys. They're relatively young, in particular, that they know who I'm talking about. Definitely join that March Storm in Pro Space. It happens in March, so kind of be prepared to go to Washington D.C. for a week. There's training. There's you meet a lot of really interesting people there, and it's eye-opening and powerful. All right, in our last few minutes here, so 5 years. Imagine, pull out your crystal ball, shake that magic 8 ball. Tell us what the next 5 years look like, and then also tell us what 25 years looks like.
Okay, so we'll start with the 5 years. Let's see, that puts us into 2030, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing the math right? Okay. We'll have, I suspect we'll have 2 commercial space stations up there. We will see reusable rockets flying pretty frequently. I am not convinced that SpaceX is going to be the Coke. I like a big playing field, and the reason is I think the market is still very undetermined. You have to, and I won't get into that, but I think there's a lot of market that has yet to shake out when it comes to launch and how it's going to shake out. But I think we'll see a number of reusables.
SpaceX, not Coke, is actually a pretty. Them's fighting words in some places.
I respect what SpaceX is doing, but I see a lot of things happening that could differentiate how it happens. Now I could be wrong, and I've been wrong on other things, so this is just my speculation.
That's the idea behind the Starship Singularity, is that it's not just SpaceX, but SpaceX is a catalyst for a bunch of other stuff. So
inspiration.
Cool. Interesting. What's 25 years look like?
I would like to see I would hope to see some major space industrialization happening. So I'd love to see, resource extraction. I'd love to see space solar power stuff happen. I think that there will be stuff like that happening. We will have had our space internet moment, I think, within the next 5 to 10 years. And so I would not be surprised to see the I don't know if it'll be 500 trillion, but or whatever the number is they propose. I can't remember if it's 500 trillion or 50 trillion, but I could easily see some mark of that, a significant chunk of that happening in the space economy.
Brilliant. Beautiful. All right, cool. Thanks a lot, Aaron. We'll see you again soon. The note in the chat is actually Morty did do March Storm last year, and his comment is it was great. So good job, Marty.
Thank you, Morty.
All right, Aaron, we'll see you. We'll see you in March. Probably sooner than that, but I'll see you in March for sure. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. All right. Well, that's our show for the evening. Sean, who's our guest next week?
Christopher Lee.
Chris Lee and Andrew Woodfield. They are venture capitalists from the firm Actuate. So I happen to know that they ran about 4 events during Space Week here in Seattle. Then they went down to LA and Silicon Valley, and they did a bunch of other events down there. So they have a lot of news to report from their various travels. So we always love getting venture capitalists on our show, the folks that actually write checks. They're the lifeblood of this industry. So getting it directly from those folks is important. And on that note, for Sean Key and our missing fearless leader, Tom Olson, I'm Michael Lane. And
I'm Sean Key. Have a great evening, guys.
Have a great night. Bye-bye.